Hey friends, so now we're going to talk about the second type of looping in Python. We're going to talk about the while loop. So what is a while loop? We use it in order to repeat the same code over and over as long as a condition is true. So this sounds like the for loop, right? Now, what are the differences between for loop and while loop? Here's the deal. With the for loop, we have understood that Python gonna go and create internally an iterator and as well a condition that keep checking whether we are at the last item of the iterator. And as long we have values from the iterator, we keep looping through the for loop. And once we don't have any more values, we go to the end. Now, there is like two issues with this setup. The first one is that we are always predefining the sequence. So before we start iterating, we know exactly that we have here 3 iterations. So it starts with the 1 and ends with the 3. And we know we're going to iterate 3 times. So we know exactly how many times we're going to iterate. The second issue is that this condition in the middle is as well something predefined from Python and we cannot change it. So it's always about whether we are at the end of the sequence. And this is exactly why we have the second type of looping. We have the while loop. So this time we're going to define our own condition for the iteration. And if our condition is true, then we're going to go and do something and go back to the top. So that means as long as our condition is true, we will keep looping and iterating. But the moment our condition is not anymore true, it is false, then we're gonna exit the loop. The big advantage is that we define our own loop. So with that, we have more freedom and flexibility. So we don't know upfront how many times it will go. It is all about our condition. And this sounds, of course, risky because we might end up easily in an infinite loop. So now by looking to those two side by side, the difference is very simple. With the for loop, we are iterating over a sequence like a range, a list. So we are looping over something known. But with the while loop, we are iterating and looping over a condition that could change anytime. So now let's dig deeper into the while loop. Now for the while loop, we have as well, like the for loop, different designs and types, and I'm gonna put them into 2 categories. The first one, we call it the while condition. So you define a condition and the loop can keep going until the condition becomes false. So this is the classical type, but we have another design, we call it the while true. So this loop gonna run forever, it is infinite. That's why we add to it together with a break statement in order to force the loop to stop. And of course, there is a reason for that. So those are the 2 main categories, and we're gonna start with the first one, the classical one, the while condition. So now we're gonna start with a very famous use case where we build a counter using the while loop. We start with the keyword while, and then we define a condition like, for example, I should be smaller than 4. And once you do that, Python gonna go and create for you a condition. And as usual, for each condition, we have either true or false. Now, since this is a while loop, false means we're gonna go to the end. But if it is true, we need to do something. Something could be like, for example, print the I. Now, if you do it like this, after the action is done, it's gonna go back to the top of the loop. So it is like 2 lines similar to the for loop. If you go and execute it, you will get an error because Python don't know what I is. So we have always to assign it first to a value before the loop. And of course, we call this initialization of the while loop. Now, once you do that, it's gonna put it, of course, before the loop starts because we are outside of the loop. So now let's see how Python gonna execute it. First, it's gonna go and execute I is equal to 1. So it's gonna create a variable and assign for it the value 1 and then enters the loop. So now it's gonna go and check, okay, is I smaller than 4? Well, it is true. That's why it's gonna go and print the I in the output and then go back to the top of the loop and then ask again, is I smaller than 4? Well, nothing changed, my friend. The I still equal to 1 and it's gonna fulfill the condition and then gonna go print it again and go again to the top of the loop and gonna ask again, is I still smaller than 4? Well, of course. So as you can see, it's gonna keep looping. We are stuck in infinite loop because we never changed the value of I. And the condition is always true. That's why it will never stop until it kills your PC. That's why we have to add a new line inside our while loop in order to give a chance for the I to change. Like for example, we could update it by adding a 1 to the value, so that the value gets incremented by each iteration and we have like a counter. So now let's see how Python gonna execute it. First, it's gonna start with the initialization. So it's gonna assign 1 to the I, and then it's gonna go and enter the loop. It's gonna go and ask, is I smaller than 4? Well, it is true. That's why it's gonna go to the print and print the current value is 1. Now next, Python gonna go to the second step and add the value 1 to the variable. So 1 plus 1, we will get 2, and then assign it to the variable I. Now gonna go to the top, but this time we have a new value for the I. So is 2 smaller than 4? Well, it is true. That's why it's gonna go to the print it in the output 2, and then update the value again. We're gonna have now 3 in the variables, and then go back to the top. Is 3 smaller than 4? Yes. Go print it in the output and update it. So now our variable is equal to 4, and then go back to the top. Now it's gonna ask, is 4 smaller than 4? Well, this is false. And finally, now Python is gonna break the loop and go to the end and exit. So as you can see, Python will keep looping and iterating as long as our condition is true until the condition change and turns to false. And this is the only way to exit our loop. And this is how we build a counter in Python using the while loop. So now if you look again to the code, we have here 3 sections. The first one, outside of the while loop, we have something called initialization, where you define the initial value of the loop variable. And then after the while, you define your condition. And now inside the loop, you do the thing that you want. But the third component that is very important, you have to build an update mechanism. So you have to change the value that we are checking in your condition. So if you don't do those 3 steps, either the loop will not work or you will be stuck in infinite loop. And by the way, my friends, if you are enjoying this type of free tutorials where I'm sketching the concepts behind the scenes and showing the codes, and you would like to see more like this, then support the channel by subscribing, liking, commenting. This really helps a lot. So now let's go back. So now let's build a counter that's gonna count from 1 to 5. Let's start first with the variable, the initialization. So we're gonna assign for it the 1. And after that, we're gonna go and build our while loop. And now we're gonna build our condition. So as long as the counter is smaller or equal to 5, we have to iterate and loop. So we're gonna say, okay, print the count. And now the last step we don't have to forget about, making the update mechanism. So we're just gonna go and add a 1 for it. And actually that's it. Let's go and execute it. Now if you look to the output, you can see we have a counter that counts from 1 to 5. So with that we have a nice counter, and of course we can control now with those values the whole counter. We could make the step of 2. So now if you go and execute it, you will get in the output 1, 3, 5. So we have now bigger steps. Or we can say we're gonna count until 10, not to 5. So with those values, we could control the whole counter. And this is what we call counter-based loop. Okay, now let's take things to the next level. Now look to our loop variable over here. This variable is getting the value from our code. It is something hard-coded and it starts with the 1. So there is no surprise how things can work over here, but we can make things more dynamic where we ask the user for a value and then we check it, and based on the user's input, we decide whether we continue in the loop or we exit. Like for example, you are building a system that asks a very simple question to the user. Do you agree? And the system gonna expect from the user only yes. Nothing else. So if the user answers like no, maybe, or I will think about it, it will not accept it. We accept only yes, only if you agree with the system. So it sounds a little bit like the system is interrogating a user and it only accepts yes. So now how are we gonna do it? First, let's go and build a variable like the answer, and at the start it's gonna be empty. So now let's go and build a condition like this with a while loop where you're gonna say if the answer from the user is not equal to what I want to hear, the yes, then ask again. And in order to ask, actually, we're gonna go and use the function input in order to get a value from the user. And you're gonna say, do you agree? And then we're gonna give the answers yes or no, then double point. Actually, that's it. That's all about the loop. We will not make anything incremental. So all what we are doing is we're gonna ask the user for a value, then we're gonna evaluate it. If it is not equal to yes, we keep asking. So the system gonna end up in infinite loop until it hears yes. Now let's go and maybe print as well outside of the loop something like thank you. So now let's try this out and execute. So now the system is asking very politely, do you agree, yes or no? The user might say, you know what, I don't agree. Now the system can ask again, do you agree, yes or no? And maybe the user says, you know what, maybe, I don't know. And as you can see, the system is keep asking because the condition over here is fulfilled. The answer is not equal to yes, and we will stay in this loop until we hear yes, until the condition is not anymore fulfilled. So now the system is asking for third time, do you agree? Well, this time maybe the user gonna be scared a little bit and say yes. And with that, you will get the thank you. And that's because we broke the loop. The condition is not anymore fulfilled. And we went outside and printed the thank you. So as you can see, it is very simple. All what you have to do is to have a looping variable like here, the answer. Then you build a condition on top of it, and then you make sure inside each iteration there is possibility to change the value. If you don't do that, otherwise you will be stuck in an infinite loop. Alright, so that's all about the while condition, the first type. Now we're gonna go to the second type, the while true. This one gonna be the most powerful, but yet the most risky. So let's dive in. We're gonna build it like this. We start with the keyword while, and then after that, we use the value, the Boolean value true. So there is no condition, no counter, no nothing. It's just the Boolean expression true. And inside the loop, we're gonna do something. So now in the chart, it's gonna be like this. Python gonna say, okay, while true. And this time we don't have like two answers. We are not checking anything. So we don't have a false and true. It will be always true. So there is no escape from this to the end. Now, if you just leave it like this and execute it, what's gonna happen? You will be stuck in infinite loop. So that's why we have to build somehow an exit in order to give it a chance to stop the loop. And in order to do that, we're gonna go and add a second condition using the if statements. For example, x is equal to the word stop. And if this condition is false, it's gonna go to the top of the loop. But if it is true, we have to do something. So think about it. What we could add here in order to exit a loop? Well, as we learned, we have the three statements in order to control the loops. And here we're going to go and use the break. It is our only chance to stop the loop. So we're going to go and include it inside the if statements. If it is true, the value is equal to stop. Then we're gonna go to the break and stop the whole thing. Now, of course, there are multiple ways on how to get a value for this variable, but we could ask the user for a value using the input function. So we ask the user for a value and then we check this value using the if statements. So now let's see how Python gonna execute it. Python gonna start by the true, and here there is nothing to be decided. So it's going to go immediately and enter the loop. So here it's going to go and ask the user for a value. Let's say our user entered high. So Python going to assign high for the x and then go to the next step and ask about it. So is high equal to stop? Well, no. So we didn't get a stop from the user. That's why Python gonna go to the top of the loop and repeat the whole thing again. Maybe in the way we are printing or doing anything. So again, Python gonna see, okay, it is true, so I can keep going in the loop and then ask the user for another value. And here the user gonna give us the value go. And in the next step, Python gonna check it. Is go equal to stop? Well, it is not. That's why it is false. That's why we're gonna stay in the loop and then go back to the top after doing something. And here again, we have true and then ask the user for again a new value. Now, finally, let's say the user says, okay, I am done and give us the stop. So now Python gonna go and check, did we get stop from the user? Well, yes. Finally, we got the flag from the user that we are done. And with that, Python gonna go to the break and execute it. And this is the point where Python gonna say, oh, We have break, we have to exit, we have to stop everything immediately and end our loop. So as you can see, this is another way on how to build a loop. So you build an infinite loop and then you add to it an if statement together with a break, because this is your only chance to stop and exit the infinite loop. Otherwise, you're gonna stuck in a black hole. So my friends, this is very risky, but if you do it correctly, everything gonna be fine. Oh, I have to fix this first. So something like this. Okay, I know you want to try the infinite loop, right? But first, a disclaimer. Only run the following statements if your machine can handle it. So only if you have strong CPU, you have saved your work, and you are ready to restart your PC. So now let's go and build our infinite loop. So we're gonna say while true, and we're gonna print something like I am unstoppable. So something like this. And again, here warning, if you execute it, your things might crash. If you stuck with it, just eliminate it using the Control-C. Now I'm gonna try this out and I hope I will not break the recording. So we'll go. Now, as you can see, it is executing. So Control-C and stop it. And now it is stops, but I still hear the PC was not happy about it. Okay, so this is how we do the infinite loop. I don't know if you are still out there here, but I hope you are happy. Okay, now back to our task where we keep asking the user to type yes to agree with us until they do. Previously, we have solved it using the classical while with the condition, but this time I'm gonna go and solve it using the while true. So we're gonna start with the while, and after that we don't need condition, we will just say true double points. And by the way, make sure the first character is capitalized. And then after that, we go immediately and say we have a variable called answer. So that means it's not like before where we have like initialization at the start. We don't need that with the while loop, because previously we have the answer in the condition, and if you don't give it like any value, you will get an error. But here we are not checking anything yet, so that's why we don't have to define anything outside. And the same thing, we're gonna ask for an input. I'm just gonna go and copy this from here. So with that, we will get a value from our user, but we have to check it, right? Otherwise, it will not work. So in order to check it, we're going to use the if statement, and we're going to say if the answer is equal to yes, and then double points. So now, as you can see, this time we are checking whether the value is yes, not like here, right? Now, if the answer is yes, what can happen? We don't have to ask anymore. We got what we want and we break. So we break the loop and get out. And of course, we can put at the end like print. So we exit and get out of our while loop. And of course, at the end, completely outside the loop, we can say thank you. So now let's try this out. I will just go and comment this out and let's go and execute it. So as you can see, we are getting the same question. Do you agree? If you say no, you're still gonna get the same question. Maybe, I don't know. So with that, as long as we are not fulfilling this condition, Python will keep asking. So currently we are inside an infinite loop and we will not exit and break until we give the yes. So now if I go and give it a yes, it's gonna be happy and say thank you. So as you can see now, the system is behaving exactly like the while condition. And for this scenario, I'm going to go with the while true because it is easier to read. So we are building an infinite loop and we keep repeating that until we get the right answer. Okay, so now time to challenge you a little bit. Now I want you to extend the current loop with new requirements. The first one is to limit the user to 3 attempts in total. So if you don't get yes from 3 attempts, you don't ask anymore. If the user type yes within the 3 attempts, then you have to print the following message. Glad we are on the same page. But if the user didn't give us a yes within the 3 attempts, you have to print 3 strikes, you are out. So now pause the video, solve those requirements, and then we're gonna do it together. Okay, so now how are we gonna solve it? Now, as you can see, the first requirement is that we have to add like only 3 attempts. So now currently it is open-ended. We keep repeating the same question until we get what we want. But now with the new requirements, we have to make it limited. And with that, we can rethink about maybe we go back to the classical while condition. I know that we're gonna iterate maximum 3 times. And for this, I'm gonna say we go back to the normal while condition. So that means we're gonna go and replace the true with a condition. And we're gonna say as long as the attempts less than 3 times, you have to keep asking the same question. But of course, we have to do the step before the while where we do the initialization. So we're gonna assign attempts to a 0. So this is the initial value, this is our condition, And of course, what is missing, my friends, we have to make the updates. So for each iteration, we have to increase the attempts. And usually we're going to put it at the ends before the next iteration. So we're going to say attempts plus equal to 1. So with that, I increased the attempts with 1. So with that, we made the 3 attempts. Now to the next requirement, we're going to say if the user did answer with yes within the 3 attempts, we have to print this message. So again, in our logic, what we are saying, get me a value from the user, and if the value is yes, then break. So that means this is a perfect place in order to print this message. So not only breaking out the loop, we would like to give this nice message where we can print, glad we are on the same page. After that, we break and then we increase the attempts. Okay, so now let's go and try this out. So now first, I would like to test whether the attempts are working, the new logic. That means the system should not ask me more than 3 times, not more than 3 iterations. Now I'm gonna say no, then ask me again, maybe, I don't know, and now should exit. Exactly, this is what happens. We exit because we are not anymore fulfilling this condition. So we are exiting the loop normally without using the break. We had 3 iterations because the attempts were smaller than 3, but for the 4th iteration, the attempts were equal to 3 and 3 is not less than 3. That's why it is not fulfilling anymore the condition and we exited the while loop normally. Now let's go and test whether this is gonna work over here. If we get yes, it's gonna break and give us this message. So let's say for the first one, it was no, but for the second one, we have yes. As you can see, the system didn't ask us for a 3rd time because we fulfilled this condition inside the while loop. The answer from the user is yes, and we fulfilled this condition. That's why we entered to this block where Python printed the message and then executed the break. So that means the while loop stops because of the break, not because we are not fulfilling the condition anymore. So we didn't exit normally, we exited using the emergency break. Okay, so now let's talk about the last requirement. Otherwise, we have to print this message, 3 strikes, you are out. That means if I'm not getting yes, we should print this message. Well, you might say, you know what? Let's go and get this one instead of the thank you. We don't need the thank you anymore. And if we didn't exit with the break, we will get this message. Okay, so now let's try this out. I'm gonna say no, no, and no. Now, as you can see, it is working. So we are getting, okay, 3 strikes, you are out. We didn't get a yes from you. But my friends, this will not work if we have a yes. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say, okay, first time no, but the second time we say yes. Now we have an issue. We have the 2 options together. So it is saying, glad we are on the same page, and this came from here. But at the same time, it says, yeah, 3 strikes, you are out. Well, this is not exactly what we want. It is either we are happy we are at the same page or you are out, not both of them. And that's because we have this print completely outside the while loop. So after we broke the loop, the next instruction in Python gonna be the print. So this is gonna be executed whatever happened in our while loop. But my friends, I would like this to be executed only if we didn't break. Now think about it. What we have used in the for loop in order to print something didn't break. Well, we have to go and use the else statements. And yes, we can use else together with the while, not only for the for loop. So let's go and add that. We're gonna say else double point and then put this print inside it. So that means if the loop ended normally without a break, this message can be printed, but if Python executed the break, then Python will not execute the else. So either we exit normally and execute the else, otherwise we exit with emergency using the break. So now let's try this out. The first one gonna be no, then the second one we're gonna say yes. So now, as you can see, we are getting now only one message, glad we are on the same page, and this came from the break. That means we fulfilled this condition and Python printed the message, executed the break, and with that we exit immediately from the loop without executing the else statements. And we can do the last test where we have never given a yes. As you can see, now we are getting the 3 strikes, you are out, and this came from the else statements. So as you can see, we can use the other control statements like the break, pass, continue, the else statements in order to build our logic and control exactly how our loop gonna behave. So now if you compare the two types side by side, you can see with the while condition, we know when the loop should stop. We have like something limited that's gonna end the loop naturally. But with the while loop, it's gonna run forever. It is infinite until something happens, until an event triggers the stop. So that means with the while condition, things can end naturally, but with the while true, you have always to add extra stuff, like a condition using the if together with the break. This is your only possibility to stop the loop. And if you are talking about the risk of having infinite loop, the while condition, it is safer. Eventually, it's gonna exit unless you made like a big mistake. But with the while true, it is more risky because you are defining an infinite loop and you have to be careful designing the if and the break. And as we learned, the best use cases for the while condition, if you are building like a counter, or you are building a limited retries, or you are validating the output from the user. But on the other side, we use the while true if you have an open-end scenario and you are trying to get a trigger from something external, like you are trying to connect to database, to stream, to APIs. So at the end, I'm gonna say always try to build things using the while condition, but if you want something more advanced, more flexible, something that is open-ended, then you have to use the while true. But be careful how you build it. Now we're gonna compare the two types of loops, the for loop and the while loop side by side. With the for loop, you need a sequence where Python gonna go and create an object called iterator, but with the while loop, you don't need anything like that. And for the for loop, Python gonna build like predefined condition. It's gonna ask always, are we done with the sequence? It's not something that you change, but with the while loop, you are totally flexible. You can add your own condition for the iterations. Now about when to use what, we use the for loop if we know already how many times we want to loop. And as we learned, we use the for loop in order to go through our data to do something, like we loop over the rows, the tables, the columns, the files, in order to clean up or prepare the data. But now, in the other hand, with the while loop, we use it if we don't know how many times we want to iterate. We are waiting for an event, a trigger, a condition. So we use it if you are building like retries in the login, or you are trying to connect yourself to a database or APIs. Now, the advantage of using the for loop is that it is simple, clear, and it is really hard to make an infinite loop with the for loop, so it is really safe. But of course, it is limited. You have always to predefine how many times you want to iterate. But on the other hand, with the while loop, it is more advanced, more flexible. It adds dynamic to your logic, but it is complex. And you have a high risk of building an infinite loop. So at the end, think of the for loop as like you have a playlist. You know exactly how many songs you have. And the while loop, you are waiting for a reply. You keep checking until the condition is met. So that's all about when to use what. Alright friends, so with that we have learned everything about the while loop, and as well we have learned everything about how to repeat a code in Python and all the use cases, why we do that. And with that, we have covered everything as well about the whole control flow. So with that, you are not anymore writing a code that is a straight line. We are making some complex logic. You are controlling the flow, the logic on how your code is executed using the conditional statements, the if, else if, and as well how to repeat a code using for and while and all the different shapes and designs in each type. So with that, we have covered everything in this section, the control flow. And next, we're going to speak about something very important, especially if you are working with data. Finally, we're gonna learn the modern data types, the data structures. So if you liked this video and you would like to have more free content like this, then support the channel by subscribing, liking, commenting. This really can help the channel to grow and to reach others like you. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.